Well, today is the 3-year anniversary of my very first coffee talk back in December of 2019. So we'll talk about that, and I'm talking about simple things today as well. All right, Stacy is here with me today, as
Yep.
is Corey, because I have a new mug that I got for Christmas.
I have a new mug that I got for Christmas, a Mama Bear mug, and it came
And Corey has a new mug that she got for Christmas. Ta-da! The baby bear mug. So Stacy's sister Amy gave us these mugs for Christmas. Oh, you want your mug? She needs a sip of water from her own baby bear mug. So we managed to actually have several times this year, several times. We had a lot of good family interaction over the year with a lot of different family members. And so for Christmas, we had family here as well. Our family was not we weren't doing quite so well this Christmas. We had a flu and a fever running through the family, so we were all taking turns while we had out of town family here with us as well. But we're almost all back to proper healing. So this is actually my very first cup of coffee that I've had since Christmas Day. No, Christmas Eve I had coffee for the last time. Christmas Day I didn't really feel like coffee, and so now I'm using my new Christmas mug from Amy for my coffee talk today. And Stacy came down with baby bear, Corey, for that as well. So
she looks like I should probably put her down.
yeah, she should probably go down. But we wanted to show you all three of the mugs, even though this is not a Papa Bear mug. It's the Mama Bear, the Papa, and a baby bear. Where are you, Corey? There you are. Woohoo! It's such a good mug, isn't it? She is very delighted to have her own mug. But yeah, sometimes it's the simple things in life that make the biggest impact. And so I wanted to, as we close out the year, I'm just thinking about the things from 3 years ago when I did my first coffee talk. And back then, one of the big things I was trying to do was I had a lot of ideas and thoughts where I wanted to be able to share them with people, but I didn't always know how. And so I had messages that I would preach on Sunday, but because of the way we usually go through a book of the Bible at church, there were just a lot of extra little things I like to talk about, and I wasn't always able to. And what was fascinating about it was the timing, because I had talked about doing this for years and years and years. And from 2013 on, Stacy would be like, well, it takes so much time. It takes so much of your time to do this. So why would you do this right now with your time? And she was right. I was like, well, it's not that I'm trying to waste all the time. I'm having a little bit of trouble with this camera up here. There we go. I wasn't trying to waste time, but I wanted to be able to share things that would be a blessing and encouragement to others. And I just remember Stacy asking multiple times the question, well, how would you do it? And so I kept 2013. I remember setting up cameras and microphones and taking videos. And it was true. I would film something, and then I'd go to edit it, and then I thought, oh, I could say that better. And so then I'd go back and film it again, and then I'd edit that together, and then I'd go, oh, if I had a bit of other footage, I could use that as B-roll. That would be even better. And so pretty soon I would have like this whole 2 or 3 days into making a short video. I mean, even 3 minutes would take me 2 or 3 days, and I didn't want to do that every single time. And so instead of wanting to go that direction, I really wanted to figure out a way. So 2018, we released Breaking the Silence. And when we released Breaking the Silence, the the way we released it was by live streaming it on Facebook. And so we would send out one every week, and then we'd take it down and upload the next one. And so as a result of that, in preparation for that, I had to get all of the live stream equipment in place so I could live stream. So now in 2019, we had a pretty busy year, but somewhere around Thanksgiving, I started thinking, if I just used my live stream equipment, I wouldn't have to edit the video. I could just release it and it would be out there. And so I did. And so the very first one back there in December, I think it might have been the 30th that year, I did episode 1. And I just remember that it glitched on me and that it didn't work quite the way I wanted it to work. And so I had this moment where right at the beginning, when if you push play in my very first episode, this is up, then it fades away. And then it's a while. It doesn't actually say anything for a while. It's not actually nothing's happening for a little while. But then it's a big old blank here. Like this is actually playing right now. This is a video playing right now. This is episode 1. And so I had technical difficulties. There we go. See if I'm even on, if you can even hear me there. I'm explaining it there a little bit. So I explain how I'm hoping to do them every so often. And my whole desire, my whole goal with this, as I shared then and will share now, I'm just trying to share things about my own thoughts about life, intentions, purpose, calling, what God is doing in my life. I talk about film. I talk about pastoral ministry, I talk about church history, talk about family, and whatever else comes in any way in those things. So today, as I'm talking about the simple things, what I mean is, a lot of times we overcomplicate stuff. Like right now for my Bible study, I'm listening through Exodus, and I'm actually doing a language study with my Bible study. So I'm listening through the book of or the whole Bible in German. So I'm listening through it. And so as I'm going through Exodus, one of the things I just keep noticing is there's this prayer where Moses is like, Lord, I cannot go on along without you. And God is sort of saying, well, I don't want you to actually do this without me. I want you to do this with me. Don't do this without me. And so there's this concept that as the law is being given, God is looking for a way for man to interact with him on a daily basis. And man is looking at it going, oh, so if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I do all these things, and then I'm pleasing to you, and then I'm good, and that's fine. And so we look at sometimes like the law or any part of Scripture, and we think, well, if I just do these things, I don't have to worry about all the others. But God is saying, actually, what I want is to do it with you. I want to do something with you. So not just you doing it, but I want to do it with you. And that's the message of Christmas, really, where it says, Emmanuel, God with us. And so for me, one of the big lessons in my life that I'm constantly learning over and over again is that it's not that God is handing me a big list and saying, go do these things, Joseph. Is that God is inviting me in and saying, Joseph, come live with me. So that in the circle of days and weeks and months and years that go by, I'm doing things with the Father. I'm in fellowship with him. That's what Jesus had when he was on earth. He was in fellowship. And so it wasn't just that he died to save me so I could go do all these things. And it definitely wasn't a list of all the things I should do in order to be saved. It was not that. It was an invitation to come to him. And I couldn't even approach him on my own. That's what salvation was. I needed to have that. So back in 2019, when I was first doing the coffee talk, here was one of the things I said. So let me see if I can arrange this correctly. I'm having just a little bit of a challenge here. I'm going to put, there we go. I'll put me up here in this corner. And then this media source. I want to actually come all the way over here. Somewhere right about here, there starts a segment that I wanted to go ahead and share. There we go.
Other gift. Yes, there are lots of gifts in the body. And the reality is that there are a lot of people out there with gifts and callings. And then something special happens. You start realizing that even if there are other people out there with gifts and callings, for some reason, the creator of the universe wants to use you. He wants to work through you. And once I realized that this wasn't me scrambling to try to make it happen for the King of the universe, but that this was the King of the universe choosing me and was going to work through me, then I could relax and say, when's the right season? And so understanding seasons has been a huge thing for me. I have to prepare. I have to plant seeds. I have to be listening. But He is in charge of the seasons. He's going to take care of this.
That was a few minutes from episode 1 of Coffee with Pastor Joseph. And the whole thing about not having to scramble to do the thing that God has called me to do, but instead to just rest in Him, that's a big deal in my life, because I've spent a lot of time, for me, I would look at my own life and think, I don't have what it takes. I can't actually scramble hard enough to do it. And so I'll wait until tomorrow. I'll wait till the next day. And so I would end up not doing the things that were before me in that one day because I didn't think I could do them well enough. And so often, and so you might call this perfectionism, you can call it a lot of different things. The reality was simple, is that I was procrastinating of doing things because I didn't think I could do them well enough. But then there would be these moments where I would understand the invitation, that it wasn't God sending me out on a quest or giving me a test and saying, here, what can you do? But it was really God saying, come along with me. And I would enter in with Him, and I would do something, and I'd be amazed to see how God would use me. And so all the things that I did and actually accomplished that were of any use at all in those early years were because I would get past myself and stop thinking that it was me having to do all of this, but it was instead God having mercy on me, inviting me in to a relationship with Him, and by the power of the Holy Spirit using me for His purposes. And so when I started doing chalk art ministry, all of those things, that was all things that God was working through me. When we actually started the Character Club and had people coming to our house every week, and we would talk about God and the Bible and character qualities and do things together, that was because I got past the idea that I'd have to do it perfectly, and I was instead working with the Creator of the universe. And so the way He works is amazing. There's just a lot of ways that God is at work, but it's often way more simple than we make it. And so, the one I'm just talking about right now is the Emmanuel idea, that God wants to do things with us. I think I have to be able to do things to a certain level of excellence, and then I will have pleased Him. But no, He is fully aware of my lack of excellence. He's fully aware of my lack of ability. But He's inviting me to serve Him and to do the things He's called me to do. So this year, as we come to the end of the year, Stacy and I are again looking at our assignments and the things that we're called to do. And so with that, so here's just a few stories of how God works, right? One, so back in 2019, we finally, Stacy and I have been talking for years, and I said, if I do the live stream, it will at most take me a morning, and I can do a 30-minute live stream or 20-minute live stream, and it'll only take me that morning. And it won't drag into the next day. It'll just be finished. And so our internet wasn't that fast yet at the time here. Later, we got much faster internet here at the house. And so even that first clip I showed you, it glitched and it froze, and I would sometimes have to restart things. But it was better than me editing the whole thing back together. And so it was actually working. Well, then a couple months later, because I was doing that and I was getting response on it, I met with some of the men from a church, and I said, what do you think if we started live streaming our church service? And so we discussed it. We discussed what we thought were the pros and cons and how we thought that might be useful for the ministry. And we decided that at the time we really didn't want to do too much of that because it would feel too impersonal for us that were in the group. And so we just decided against doing that. And we said, well, you know what? Maybe sometime, but not now. And then about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks later, the whole COVID thing came. and churches everywhere were shutting down, and we weren't sure what we were supposed to do. And so our small group of people that were getting together, continued to meet to do we started a live stream. So we started live streaming Living Water Fellowship services. But because I had just started Coffee with Pastor Joseph, my understanding of what was needed for live streaming something had really been growing. And so I was taking all of my gear from the house and taking it down there to the church, and we would live stream there. And so then Bob Chartier started buying some gear, and we started going back and forth. And pretty soon, it took us a year and a half to finally have all of the gear necessary to really be able to live stream easily and quickly from church. And in that time, my setup here at home improved a lot as well. But God had been preparing us for that moment so that when the storm came, it was a hiccup for us, but it wasn't a huge impossibility. And I think we live streamed for about 4 weeks, and then families and people started just coming back to church. And especially at that point, we realized that there were lies being told about the whole COVID thing. And there was definitely a double standard that was practiced in our city, because there was a strong word for churches to not meet. But Black Lives Matter had done a bunch of different things and had big gatherings and done all kinds of stuff. And our governor spoke very highly of their gatherings, but at the same time was meeting with faith leaders saying, you guys shouldn't meet. And so we thought, well, now there's a real double standard here. We still don't fully understand what COVID is as much as we do now. But it was a very interesting time to see how God had prepared me, having a desire to want to do a coffee talk for a very long time. Finally, Stacy and I agreeing it's time, starting it in December of 2019, January, February, that was my practice time. And then we get to March, and the pastors, the other men at church and I had talked about it. We decided, here's what we would do if we were to live stream. This is what it would look like, but I don't know that we would. And so then suddenly we were, and we were just using my equipment and gear and expertise because I was already doing it, so that was handy. And now we're still using it as a ministry, as an outreach, and as an encouragement to the fellowship, to the churches, not just to us who are gathering, who are able to gather, but to those who cannot gather. So that's one example of how God sometimes works. There's other times, back, and I think I've shared this story before, back in 2019, I was trying to figure out or 2020, how we were going to make We Three Kings, the movie, and I needed affirmation. I needed confirmation from God. And many, many times in our life, if God is at work, he will provide the path forward. He will provide people to work with you, and he will provide the finances from wherever they're supposed to be coming from. And I just remember walking that path and many times thinking, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know how to do this. I'm not a good enough producer to do this kind of work. And the point I realized then, and I realize now, and I realize over and over again, God doesn't ever expect me to actually know it all, to know and to be an expert and to do the whole thing. That's not the point. There's a simpler way of life, which is walking with Jesus, just reading the Bible, praying, and doing the next right thing, and going ahead and walking like, the children of Israel had to walk straight down, the priest, they walked right down to the Jordan River, and when their feet touched the water stopped, the blocked up upstream and flowed away, and they walked through on dry ground, is what it says. But they had to walk toward it. And that, I believe, is part of us as we are walking with Jesus. The simplicity of it is simply that, is we're walking with Jesus. And he's going to take care of us. Not always the way we think he will, but if we're looking for Jesus with us in the trial, because this is the big deal for me. I thought that if I prayed once for wisdom, Lord, please give me wisdom, then surely I would suddenly feel the impartation of wisdom, boom, and I'd be like, aha, here is exactly what we need to do, and I could just walk in wisdom. But it isn't quite like that. Part of wisdom, the proverb says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Well, as wisdom begins to grow in me, I realize how much I need Jesus. I realize how much I need the Holy Spirit on a daily basis, depending, trusting on him, interacting with him. And so it's not that God ever wants to just give me so much so that I can just run off on this quest and don't need him anymore. Everything that I do, my entire interaction with Jesus, is because he wants to walk with me. He's calling me into fellowship with him. Read that prayer in John where he's praying for his disciples and how he prays for them, and not for them only, but also for all of us that would come because of them. He really wants for us to be one with him as he is one with the Father. There's a level of fellowship that is an invitation that is not in our programs, it's not in our wisdom, it's not in knowing how to do things, but it's simply in spending time with Jesus, in praying simple prayers all day long, listening to the Lord, interacting with him. That's the beauty of Christianity, is that it's an invitation to walk with Jesus. And I think of how complicated we make things. Sometimes I think of Christ's return. That's an easy one. Jesus said, I'm coming again. And so with that, he plants in every believer this hope and expectation that Jesus is coming again. And it's a glorious hope. Jesus is coming again. But what do we do with that? What do we do with this glorious hope that Jesus is coming again? Oh, almost immediately, 2,000 years ago, we suddenly had what we now call the amillennial, premillennial, and postmillennial. And so we had three different views from very early on. We all believed that Jesus was coming again, but we believed that this Bible verse meant this and that Bible verse meant that. And so we had discussions. And so already as early as like Justin Martyr writing, I think in the 150s, in the second century, there's already writing going back and forth where people are saying, this is what I believe, but there's others who believe something different, and that's okay. And so there's already differences in the church, but they're not making a big deal about it. Well, we continue on throughout the centuries, and we finally come to the United States, where people have much comfort and much time on their hands and safety, and are not being persecuted for their faith. And they're able to really complicate something that's quite simple. Jesus is coming again. Jesus said, I'm telling to everybody, watch for my coming. And we're supposed to have this expectation that he's coming again. But now we took the traditional view of a traditional premillennial view, and we added 3 or 4 more ways of slicing and dicing it so that we can argue about the rapture and how the rapture is supposed to look and when it comes and how it comes and who's where and what happens. And all of these things, especially the whole pre-tribulation rapture premillennialism, that's a big mouthful, especially those that it is a more recent phenomenon that people in the church are arguing. And yet there are some people in America who are almost willing to die for that, who think that it's the only way to look at the end times, and they almost forget the fact that Jesus left us here to do something while he was in heaven until he comes again. What did he leave us here? To know him, to walk in the Holy Spirit, to make Christ known to other people, to make disciples. These are all things he left us to do. To learn how to love our neighbor, to bless those who curse us. These are all things that he left us here to do. How do we make disciples? How do we bless those who curse? This is part of what we're supposed to be doing. And instead, we can spend all of our time having a huge discussion on pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib, premillennialism, and all this other stuff. And it's amazing. And yet the simple truth is that Jesus is coming again. And so sometimes the simple things are the best. And I'm sure you can think of several other areas in which simplicity would really be nice to have it back in our lives. So, I've been praying a lot about the assignments that are coming next in my life. I'm working on, right now, a follow-up documentary to Breaking the Silence. And so we've gone and gotten a lot of interviews. I know that, the way God set up the interviews and the things that are in them has been clearly him leading and guiding us. But now I'm left with the time it takes for me to put it together and figure it out and understand it. And so, how am I going to do this? Well, I don't have the expertise. That's what I figured out the first day I sat down here to edit, is that I actually don't know what I'm doing. When it comes to making documentaries, sure, I've made some before, But you know what I did then and what I'm doing now is I'm using whatever tools God has given me, and I'm going to use them to the best of my ability. And so I've been praying and asking the Lord a lot of questions about this as we've been working through it. I'm just seeking the Lord. I want to know, Lord, how do I do this? And I don't want to assume for a minute that I have it figured out. And so one of the answers to prayer that happened this year, this Christmas season, was part of what I'm working on requires a little bit of animation and some sketching for the documentary. And so I thought, Lord, it would be so much better if I could just do this digitally on my computer, but I don't have the equipment that I need. And then for Christmas, I was blessed totally above and beyond by this over here. This is a electronic sketch pad that I can use to work in both the editing program and in all my sketching programs and stuff. And so for the animations that I'm needing to work on, it is what I need. And so I had decided a couple of weeks ago, I said, Lord, I don't think that I can go down the animation path because I can't do the sketching that I need to do. It's going to be too much work for the way I can't do it. I don't have the proper equipment. And so I was telling the Lord about it. I was kind of saying, Lord, what do you want me to do? I can just pay another artist to make me some sketches, and I'll just use sketches as illustrations. But instead, on Christmas Day, I unwrapped this box from my brother and sister-in-law, and it was the very piece of equipment that I need to do the next thing in the assignment that God has given me to make this documentary. So again, it was amazing to me because it seems so complicated, and yet God provided the right tool at the right time to say, no, Joseph, I want you to continue with the original idea. And so, simplicity, choosing the simple path, doesn't mean that I didn't even have to figure out how to buy the thing. I just had to talk to the Lord about it and say, Lord, what do you want me to do? And He provides. I keep being amazed by that in my life. And then I have one more closing thought, and it's this one right here. This mug that Amy gave me, it says best papa ever. And I think about, I looked at that and was like, best papa? Come on, like there's lots of dads and fathers out there. And I realized that's not what this is saying. God has given me a few children. I have 4 boys and 1 little girl. And I am the best papa they could have. I don't have to get complicated about it. It's just simple. If I show up and love on those little people and do stuff with them, I'm the best papa ever. That's all. They need me. That's the way God designed it. He didn't go, oh, I'm going to make these children and then I'm going to give them some inferior man and that's going to just ruin their lives. No, He said, I have given these children into this man's family, and he is going to be the best papa for them. And all he has to do is show up and be there, hug on them, love them, be consistent with them. And so sometimes I want to overcomplicate things and say, well, I better read some books about how to be a good papa. Well, I can if I want to. But really the most important thing is that I just show up. I just need to be there in their lives. And that's the best papa that they could possibly get, is the papa that's there. And so God gave me children, and He gave them my children. He gave me as their dad, and I don't have to overcomplicate it. So I just need to stay humble and love them. And it's really quite simple. If I keep serving the Lord and following Him, I am the best papa they'll ever have. But I'm not the best papa for your kids. You are. And there's a lot of other kids out there that I'm not the best papa for. But for these 5, I'm the best papa ever. Because that's the way God designed it. Keeping things simple the way God designed it is way better than trying to make things go some other direction. So, I don't know where all the conversation will go with Coffee Talks in the future. But I am grateful for those who have watched with me, who have encouraged me along the way, and who have been praying for this next documentary series that I'm working on, and then hopefully for some of the other movies we'll be making. I'm just walking forward one step at a time, seeking to do the next right thing and trying to not overcomplicate it, but to keep it simple and know that there's a God in heaven who has chosen me for these things, and I'm excited for what's coming up in the next year. So, may the Lord bless you. If you're feeling claustrophobic or you're feeling like it's not working well, keep it simple. Just wake up every day and say, Lord, what do you have for me today? And that really is the best sort of simplicity. Keep it simple. I'll see you next year.